Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly podcast Tech Shift F9, a podcast dedicated to reinventing your career in the age of technology. How do we do that? We do that by interviewing really interesting people who've come across different career paths, have made some decisions, and they're going to be here sharing their experience. I'm Maurizio, I'm your host, and this week we have one of my former colleagues, particularly from the pre-global financial crisis era, and his name is William Van Alstine, but he goes by Bill. Bill is a US native. He's built a career in finance here in Japan, focusing on operations, and he's worked for some of the most interesting banks out there: Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers, Deutsche Bank, many more. However, Bill has also been on an incredible entrepreneurial journey over the last 10 years as a founder and CEO of Good Morning Tokyo, Japan's first specialty cereal producer. I love the granolas, I love their products, and you can find them in prestigious shops all around Tokyo, such as the Kashimaya department store and the Tokyo American Club. Bill, so happy to host you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Mauricio. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. All right, let's get started. So, Bill, you started, well, I don't want to give your age away, but you did start your career in the 80s. And you saw the bubble economy in Japan and all that came afterwards. But I'm really curious to understand how you were in those early years of your career and what your expectations for your career were as a young banker.
Frequently now, the bankers are picked up at some of the student job fairs. And, they're all magna cum laude, and that's the kind of process that takes place at a lot of these job fairs. When I joined Merrill Lynch, a call came into the Japan Area Studies program. I was in the master's program there, and the operations manager wanted somebody with 3 years Japanese experience, and that's all. And I had no financial background whatsoever. I wasn't studying any finance.
Oh,
and
wow.
and I joined Merrill Lynch, and he hired me without ever knowing what I looked like.
Amazing.
I just showed up, with 2 suitcases and a carry-on. And I did have some friends here in Japan, so I was able to get my apartment and stuff. I was a local hire. That's how I started out, and I started as a bookkeeper, and that's how I learned what stocks are in bond. And in fact, it was Sally Stock and Billy Bond. That's how Merrill Lynch trained its people.
Oh, my.
And through that career, I learned all about money, finance, economy.
That must have been a very steep learning curve. And was it fun as well?
No, it was terrible. But as I described it to friends back at the University of Michigan, I said, they had asked me to fill out some questions. I said, it's really terrible, but terrible is a lot better than boring. And to me, and really late nights, midnight, 1 a.m. job every day, lots of overtime, Saturdays, Sundays, just to try. And part of it was learning it on the job, and not being a very good bookkeeper, by the way.
So, Bill, something very interesting to me, particularly in your role in operations, and maybe in a minute you can give a brief explanation of what that work entailed. But over the years, you've seen an industry change incredibly much, right? From the inside. Banking used to be a lot of pen and papers and telephones, and automation just went through the roof over that time. So huge impact of technology in the business. How did you handle that? I mean, was that something that interested you? How did you get up to speed with it? How did you feel things were happening in that space? And the reason I'm asking this question is the fact that we're seeing exactly the same happening today, but in different field, different approach, with AI in particular. And so I want to understand the mindset of someone who's gone through such a big change and how you handle that.
When I joined Merrill Lynch, I saw my first fax machine. That's how far back I go. 1985, I started my career. After 2 years, I trained as a futures bookkeeper, and I actually went to Singapore and trained, and they taught me how to do the calculation of margin. and it was on a big B4 piece of paper, and you would write down the futures position that you had the previous day, and then you would fill out the next B4 page, which was the following day, which is a blank sheet that you had mimeographed off, which would have, number of contracts, what was the strike price, whether they closed or not, and you would do the calculation of the margin and the realized profit and loss, or the unrealized profit and loss. You do it on a calculator with a tape, and I would go through a roll of tape on the calculator within probably 12 hours. I need a new piece of paper. I mean, a new roll in the calculator. From there, we saw the introduction of Lotus 123 on the XT and the AT. Prior to that, the floppy disk was almost as big as an LP, and you would put it in a machine that was, the printer needed a whole table to hold the printer for the word processing to print a A4 document. And the fax machine would and you'd stand, there was a long line standing in front of the fax machine. So you were physically limited to the amount of business that you could do. And so you had these armies of people back at Merrill Lynch in New York that were doing the exact same job, well, similar job. So for instance, why did I do that thing on a big piece of paper? Because the actual calculation of margin as a bookkeeper needed to be done by 9 a.m. Tokyo time, but what was coming from Merrill Lynch was coming out at noon and in their mainframe. And then you had to reconcile them, because if there was an error that occurred on the so for instance, they booked it wrong, they booked it to the wrong account, or they put in the wrong number of contracts, something like that, and they had to make an adjustment, or more commonly, they charged the wrong commission. And so then when they make a correction, then the position that is in there is not matching what the customer really wanted. And so you're doing this shadow between your handwritten page and the official page, and waiting for those to match up again when the corrected position finally closes in the account. And that was just miserable. It was similar to several years later where I had a bookkeeper doing mortgage-backed security fund and tracking the factors. Again, manual. Well, he had Lotus 123. He probably had Windows was just coming in then, but it was just hundreds of transactions in the mortgage funds that he had to keep track of and watch the factors and what is exactly what's in the fund to be able to tell the customer. My biggest thing with technology is that they would bring in a new system and it would never talk to the other system, and so you would end up, for instance, keying in a position, or your staff, obviously your staff, 3 times, and now you have 3 different systems that management demands that the transaction is in, and do they match?
Right.
And that kind of a situation went on for 10 years at least, as the business continued to grow. And the front office technology was always way ahead of the back office technology.
Right.
So for instance, the guys in coming up with the new kinds of bonds that they would sell to the customer would have, for instance, pay its interest on the last Friday of the month, or it would pay it on May 15th and something like that, some annual payment. And now they've come up with things. It's like, well, if that lands on a Saturday, then it's going to be the Friday before that. Well, there's no system that can capture that kind of thing. They can do that now, but at the time you're trying to put that in a mainframe, it doesn't work. And swaps as well.
Oh yes,
swaps in the front office was fine. They could evaluate it. They could tell a customer everything. Back office didn't. It was a really long catch up where you just had people having in their head what the system was supposed to have.
So you were essentially constantly in the fire control mode, right? Like firefighting here, firefighting there. Was there ever a feeling, and again, I'm not sure if it's an industry issue or specific to the banks that you were working in. Was there a feeling in your career when you felt that people figured it out how to go about change management of systems? And it wasn't just, oh, here's the brand new shiny tool, figure out how it works and make it work with the rest. I mean, did that ever happen?
Yes. Well, yes, but okay. So a good example, I can't name names, I guess. They would have changed the bank versus run the bank. And you would split your operation between this small team of people that were responsible for the new systems coming in. And then you had your regular day-to-day guys that were responsible for processing the business and delivering and controlling the business and delivering the service to the customer. And they got to that point because every time you're rolling out a system, right, nobody wants it. The the people that are going to it's never a good thing. It's never a good thing. It's either going to be a real hurdle for them. It's a ton of overtime on top of the regular jobs, and it's going to eliminate their job, and they're going to get fired or they're going to get moved, and they're going to have to learn something else. Never positive for the clerk or the guy, but
Working level guys, yeah.
Yeah, but that's life, right? You're in the bank.
Totally, totally. And but let's go back a little bit to talk about you. I'm interested to understand when later on in your career after the global financial crisis, you actually took a career break around that time, and then you went back and joined an investment bank one more time. And I'm really interested to understand how it felt going back to a finance role after being out of that environment. And if there's anything perhaps out of that experience that, with hindsight now, you think you should have done differently. And generally, how does one prepare to go back to somewhere they feel comfortable with, but probably might have changed or moved on since last time they worked there?
Okay, so the reason I went back, we'll talk later, but I started a business, and the business had not a lot of revenue. I had the experience of the bank. I had some value, but the role I came into was in fact, not operations, but financial control. They gave me the responsibility of financial control and the financial controllers, which I would say I wasn't qualified for in terms of what are these guys actually doing? How are they calculating it? They were not quants, but they were all really strong math guys, could do all of the Greeks, and they could do the evaluation of what the products they're doing, the flash for what the desks were making. What I did to prepare for that job, I learned everybody's names. I memorized their names before I joined. I had my org chart. I came in. I was able to, and actually I found that was not that easy as I got older, because I'm going back into that job in my 50s for a couple of reasons. I was energized to get back in the business, but at the same time, wow, this is not that easy to just it didn't pop into my head. I really had to study it a couple of times, a couple of days to be able to get all of those names. It was probably 30 people.
Certainly, that must have made a good impact, making sure that you're feeling part of the team, part of the group. Did you feel the environment? Of course, it was a different bank, but did you feel that the environment itself had changed after the GFC?
Yes. So a huge difference had taken place, particularly in Japan. I went from an environment where my previous job, we had tech guys. I was so comfortable in the previous job that my infrastructure would always be up to date and able to handle the regulatory changes. And now I'm in a global bank where all of the IT people are offshore. And you get in line with everybody else across all the regions. And, well, this is a regulatory change. Is your regulatory change in Japan rank higher than the regulatory change in Canada and just all across the board, just the whole list of how many hundreds of countries the bank operates in. It was not good.
Right.
I lasted a year there. I got canned because they wanted to offshore my unit to Singapore and India, and no, I take that back, to the Philippines. And I talked to my staff, and I had a couple of guys, and I said, net, is this a benefit to the firm or not? And they said no, and they gave me an explanation. So I came back to my boss, and I handed her a piece of paper. I said, I can beat your number. You're going to offshore this stuff in order to save X. I said, I can beat it onshore, and I handed her the paper. Well, they don't want a better number. They need to do the project so they get paid globally.
Got it.
And so I got canned, and I'm happy with that, actually. I think I did the right thing for the bank, and my boss got canned. Her boss got canned within 6 months.
Yeah, it sounds like investment banking. But
yes,
that gave you an opportunity to focus on your own business, Good Morning
yes.
Tokyo, which I'm a big fan of. And just, everyone starts a business for a different reason. Tell us a little bit about what motivated you to launch a business fairly, late on in your career.
Despite the fact that I was in a bank, I was always quite entrepreneurial. We would go to free market and you'd sell junk, and we were selling posters. We were buying posters in the States and putting them in frames and selling them at the free market. And I was really on the border, like, do I want to make a shop or not? But I never did. Then I was in Hong Kong for a while, and I started eating muesli, which is a cereal that comes from Europe, because I was in Hong Kong. It's much more European focused place, right? And I was eating it, and I was exercising. I found that I was able to lose a lot of weight. And so I wanted to make a shop to introduce people to the opportunity to eat cereal and actually be able to keep your weight off. And I had that in the back of my mind. I discussed it with people, and they said, and one in particular said, well, you'll go out of business. He said, you got to make granola. And I said, okay, I'll do both. And he was right. I sell 90% or more than 90% granola, but I sell muesli.
That was good advice.
Yeah, it was. It was, because when people want to talk to me about health and like weight, and I'm like, well, here's the muesli, and then
they don't like it.
Yeah, well, they should like it. It's good.
Yeah, I like it. I love all your products, but how that came about? How did you make it happen? And maybe what were some of your worries that you might have had, or things that you thought you needed extra planning? I mean, you're an ops guy, so I'm sure the planning went really well. But was there anything in your MO that you had to adapt for this new venture?
It's funny, because through my career, I'd learned how to, for instance, write a business plan. And okay, we're going to put the salaries in, and we're going to put, what's the rent and all that. And it was spot on, Mauricio. My business plan was spot on. But what I didn't know was that I was going to be the cook.
There you go.
Yeah. Nor did I know that my shop was going to be 5 minutes walk from my place in the middle of nowhere. I thought it was going to be in a high traffic area, and those were critical success factors. I did this business with my wife. Those were her decisions, which were absolutely critical to the success of the company. Putting me in the kitchen, making me know everything about how to make it, placing it away from high traffic areas, so it wouldn't be because we would have maybe 4 people wander in, take the risk, and walk into the shop at the beginning.
Right.
It was just so different. We got a lot of press. We got a huge amount of press because of the fact that it was so weird. But the actual number of customers was not so big. And that's why I went back to the bank. But when I came back out, I was like, never again. I told my wife after I came out, I said, I'm not doing that again. It's just too fun to be the boss.
Right.
And I would be in that kitchen, maybe 10 hours, not straight, but you'd be in the kitchen, you go back in the kitchen. And I'm like, is this really work? I'm doing what I want to do. Is this, am I, I kind of ask myself kind of guiltily, is this really what I should be doing? For how many years it's doing something that somebody told me to do.
Right.
And all of a sudden now I'm just doing what I'm going to do. It's taken a while to get used to it, but it's really nice there's the responsibilities I'm going to pick up and do myself. And then there's the ones I'm going to delegate.
Got it. And you were launching something new, right? It's sitting in Hong Kong, and of course it's been popular in other places, but new in Japan, that, as you just said, probably played a positive part in terms of getting press. But how did you go about figuring out if there was a market for the product, or was that a gut feeling?
The go sign was I was in Kawaguchi, at a kind of a resort thing, and we went to the 7-Eleven, and I saw a bag of granola being, a Calbee granola on the shelf. That was my go sign. If they're eating granola in buying it at the 7-Eleven in Kawaguchi, then I can sell. I got 36 million people in Tokyo, in the environments that can get to that shop. I can find some customers there. If you can't launch, if it's food, the one place you can launch it is Tokyo, because everybody can get to you. They can get to you by public transportation, or they can drive.
I know this is very generic, but for those listening who may be interested in starting their own food producing business, perhaps coming from an unrelated background, like in your situation, do you have any sort of suggestions you want to share? Some things you've learned along the journey that you wish you had known when you started?
What you have in your mind is not what's going to come out.
Right.
And in fact, if it does, you're probably going to go out of business. Because most people have in their mind, and I did, right? I have a big marquee and I'm in a nice location. I've got all the customers walking in and out. Well, how do you guarantee that part? How do you guarantee that your menu is good? I would say, on the positive side, though, it's very easy to start a business. First of all, whether it's recipes, whether it's feedback, the new economy. When we started out just using the internet, you get the access to all of how to do a business. It's all right in front of you. All of the things that used to be part of the knowledge economy that were all behind walls, where you had to like go to a consultant and he's going to teach you something and you're going to pay for it, and you're going to have all these gates that you have to go to pay the money. They all fell down. So you could buy restaurant equipment, cash registers, everything you could get on the internet for used. They have a lot of used restaurant equipment sales points where you can go and buy anything: ovens, fryers, mixers, tables, chairs, everything. And the thing to remember is, where are they coming from? From the people in front of you who went out of business.
Right.
And I mean, there's a lot of stuff in those places. Most of these guys are going out of business. They set up and they go out of business. Their stuff gets sold off like that. So that start out small, focus, have your food menu needs to be focused, to the extent possible. Use equipment like point of sale systems and things like that.
Automate, make it focused. Ideally, try to. I love the way you said about feedback. Right now, the tools to get feedback are there. Solicit and seek feedback. How much did feedback help you shape your own menu and your own offering?
We set up our internet shop at the same time, almost on top of the fact that we set up the physical shop, which was also part of the business plan. And through that, you were always, people would buy the granola online, and then they would give you your feedback as to whether it tasted good. And basically, we got a lot of repeater business right up front, but they wanted more flavors. We started out with 3 granolas and 2 mueslis.
Right. Well, how many do you have now?
We have 40 in stock all the time.
There you
flavors.
go.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
We have well over 300 recipes that have been cooked, a label made for them, and sold. And several of them you'll never see again. But we just go ahead and constantly put new things together. What's quite interesting, they all have oats in them.
Mm-hmm.
All of them have oats in them, and yet you can make these hundreds of different versions of granola.
And Bill, concluding, what's ahead of you personally and ahead of your business over the next few years?
The business needs to grow its revenue in, we've got a couple of new products. We have fresh milled oats from Kalamazoo. It's a machine that grinds groats into oats right there in front of you. And I'm trying to get that rolled out. We just want to roll out a granola bar. We've been working on that.
That'd be awesome.
To the level. It's not to the level of our granola. Our granola has incredibly excellent reputation. People eat it. They're really impressed. We're not there with the bar yet. I'm not going to sell a bar. I'm going to sell the bar that people bite into and are impressed and turn around and look at it. That's just our reputation. That's how we do things.
Absolutely. Can't wait for that. And how about you personally?
I'm setting up another company with my daughter, which is an app company. And we'll see how that goes.
Fabulous. Well, maybe when you launch, we'll get you back on the podcast to talk about that. How does that sound?
Yeah, I hope so. You had one other question in there, which was about whether it's a good thing to start up a business. And I would say, yeah, my answer was that go ahead and start your business. Go ahead and go after your dream. I mean, what's the downside? You're never going to lose your iPhone. All the poor people out there got an iPhone. You might lose. You might have to step down in your standard of living. But in terms of the risk reward, talk to people about your idea, and definitely get the feedback. But I don't think there's a better time in the world that's going to be able to support people. Look at 1/5 of the male population in the United States doesn't work and sleeps on a couch. Well, if they can do that, and you've got enough energy to start a business, what are you worried about?
Totally.
There's a couch. Your mom's waiting with their couch for you.
That's a great way of looking at it. And totally agree. I think entrepreneurship is something to be nurtured, supported, and there shouldn't be a fear of failure. No, that doesn't mean just jump in and do stuff, right? You could do your research, have some bright ideas, try to work with smart people, have some passion for it. But yeah, that sounds great. Bill, I'm so thankful for you being on the show. Thank you so much. It's been great catching up with you, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care.
Well, folks, this brings the episode to a close. I've greatly enjoyed talking to my old colleague and friend, Bill. I hope you did too. I'm sure you did. Till next time, stay cool, stay positive,